Thank you, Bob, and thank you, Bruce. You are indeed an inspiration to all of us. All right, so for the final award for the night, and really the personal high point of my presidency of CCDLA, for me personally, we're going to present the Thomas J. Ullmann Champion of Liberty Award. Now, it used to be just the Champion of Liberty Award, but we renamed it 2 years ago to honor the person who embodied the award, who was the champion of liberty, the person that, for many of us, me included, represented the highest ideal of a criminal defense attorney and a human being. And so it is my particularly great honor this year to call up the presenter of this year's award, which is Tom's wife, Diane Pacetta Ullmann.
Good evening. When I received a call a little over a year ago telling me that the CCDLA had made a decision to change the name of the Champion of Liberty Award to the Thomas J. Ullmann Champion of Liberty Award, I was filled with emotion and gratitude, and I still am. I immediately called my sons, Jesse and Eric, my daughter-in-law Heather, and Tom's sister Vivian to share the news with them. They were also touched. I was equally touched when I received a call from Willie asking me to introduce him tonight. Merriam-Webster defines a champion as one who does battle for another's rights or honor. Tom fits that definition perfectly. He was a champion in every sense of the word and in all aspects of his life, in his role as father, colleague, teacher, mentor, consumer and customer, which you can ask anyone at Willoughby's about, friend, lawyer, and husband. He made time for everyone, regardless of their position in life or their income or status, and regardless of how busy he might be at the time. He spoke to and treated everyone with the same amount of respect, and he had the gift of being a great listener. He also had the gift of knowing how to enjoy life, balancing work, family, vacations, and exercise in a way that appeared to be effortless, even to me. Which brings me to why it is such a pleasure to be presenting Willie Dow with this award tonight. Willie is a champion with a capital C. Everyone in this room knows how highly regarded he is in the field of law, both in and out of the legal community. Willie's impeccable reputation goes far beyond New Haven and Connecticut. Let me share with you a few comments that some of his former clients have to say about Willie. I will paraphrase. Attorney Dow is everything you want when you or someone close to you is in a very bad place. His well-earned reputation and professional integrity means that judges and prosecutors take him very seriously. His experience and intelligence allow him to get straight to the heart of your problem and its best resolution. And from another client, Attorney Dow kept his eye on the ball until he had achieved the outcome that was within the scope of what he had originally outlined to me. And to illustrate the respect that Willie has from his clients, the following. I have so much respect for Mr. Dow. I ran into him sometime after my case was over. I addressed him as Mr. Dow, and he immediately said, "Please call me Willie." And I replied, "Yes, Mr. Dow." Colleagues use adjectives such as trustworthy, professional, reliable, and wise to describe him. One said, Willie can have the most unlikable client, and you end up finding that person likable, mainly because Willie is so likable. The accolades, quotes, and legal accomplishments go on, and most of you in this room are already familiar with those. So I'd like to share some of what you may not already know about him. William F. Dow was born and grew up in Stony Creek on Pearl Harbor Day. He attended Yale and served as a Peace Corps volunteer in Columbia. Willie graduated from the University of Pennsylvania School of Law and went on to work for 2 years with legal services programs in Florida and D.C. He then served with the Public Defender's Office in D.C. for 4 years, ultimately serving as chief of the Juvenile Court Division. Prior to entering private practice with the Jacobs and Grudberg law firm, currently the Jacobs and Dow law firm, he served as assistant U.S. attorney for the District of Connecticut. In spite of the fact that Willie has had a demanding law practice, he has always found time to balance his work with life. He and his terrific wife, Diane, who has also dedicated her life to helping others as an educator and mentor, have raised 7 children and have 9 grandchildren, which of course also means that he has spent countless hours at sporting events, coaching, attending parent-teacher conferences, and helping with homework. He even served as the commissioner of the Youth T-Ball program in New Haven. Family has always been a priority. Willie, you have raised the bar for the bar. It is a privilege for me to be presenting this award to you tonight. And I want you to know that I'm not presenting to you by myself because Tommy is with me all the time. And I'd like to believe that he is here with us now with that beautiful smile that he has, saying, "Way to go, Willie." And I'm sure you could picture that. And I can as well. It is an absolute honor for me to be presenting you with the Connecticut Criminal Defense Lawyer Association's Thomas J. Ullmann Champion of Liberty Award tonight.
Well, the most significant part of this, and many of you didn't realize that there is a stipend that goes with this. And if any of you have seen the Brinks truck outside, that was for me. I'll continue the theme of humility, which is I am humbled as the other 2 recipients are to receive this. You know, Tommy Ullmann, when he passed away, there were a number of people made remarks about that. Tommy. And the one that I chose to make, there was that Tommy Ullmann was the gold standard by which we measure ourselves when we perform and try or represent clients. And he was, because he cared, and he had that unique ability to have a backbone of steel without the animosity that sometimes come with true believers, He was able to work the system, to work the people in the system, and to work for his clients to get results. Tommy, which many of you don't know, I think, there's a group of lawyers who the first Friday of every month goes to Pepe's for pizza. Tommy was part of that group. And so my last memory, this is true, my last memory of Tommy was about the time he was going to retire. He said, you're kind of BSing as people do. And he said, I always figured when I walked into court, I had the Constitution on my side, that's all I needed. And he said it that way, like he was talking about getting a haircut. And it just made such an impression on me. Now, obviously, when I talk about being humbled, that's part of it. And of course, the fact that Diana is able to introduce me, and I want to thank Morgan. This was originally set up for another date. Diana couldn't make it. And so we changed it to this date. But that's especially meaningful. You know that, Diana, right? And Eric, I see at the gym once every 6 weeks. Eric, is that what it is? Yes. Okay. Something of that nature. Yes. I remember once heard Colin Powell say, when you see a turtle sitting on a fence post, he didn't get there without help. Let me just do the usual, but hopefully you'll take it as meaningful because it is to me. My wife, Diane, stand up for a second. You want to stand up? So Diane has that gift, which very few people do, but when you see it, it's just absolutely awe-inspiring. It's when they wake up in the morning, and instead of worrying about, geez, which court do I have to be in, or what car should I drive to? Maybe I'll get a good tie today. Diane thinks about other people, and thinks about what she can do for other people, and paramount among that is not looking for recognition. It's not so that if you do the math on that, of course, she could never be a lawyer, right? But she in fact is my idol. Whether you believe that or not, that's true. Now there's another individual who's helped me out over the years, Lori Della Camera. Laura, stand up. So Lori Della Camera has been sentenced to 35 years with me. Okay, she is my secretary. She has multiple skills. But the paramount skill that she has, and any decent lawyer will recognize why this is a skill and a strength, is she'll tell me when I'm wrong. And, it's not unusual to say, this is stupid, don't send it out that way, or it doesn't make any sense. You know how valuable that is when you're running around thinking you're the cock of the walk? I mean, it's just, and that's what, we all have these huge egos, it says, the theory about performing in court is juror number 6 is going to, at the break, is going to run to the phone and say, you got to come down and watch this guy. He's terrific. When in fact, the goal should be, what a shitty witness that was, but oh no, we have to get in the way between the witness and the whatever. But anyhow, Lori has that skill to call us to call me to account for my many shortcomings. I have 2 partners, Jonathan Katz and Rosemary Payne, who are sitting over here, and things that you never say personally to them, but I hope you both appreciate how much I appreciate you two. These guys, they care about doing a good job. They want to represent clients well. And one of the gifts that I've had throughout my career is that I've always worked with people whom I can trust. You never had to think twice about that type of thing. And they're going to be there. They're going to be there for you. They're going to be advising you to do the right thing and encouraging you to do it and tolerating you. Now, there's a certain shortcoming that I have that we ascribe actually to our cleaning staff, because at 4 o'clock every afternoon when they leave, I think one of them sneaks in the back and smokes cigars for a while. And if they're not careful, we're going to call ICE and take care of that problem. I have a staff, we have a staff, many of whom have been with us for like 30 years, which is legit. And again, the same thing, the same strain plays through, that they're all trustworthy, they care, and they care about helping us. In recent years, the last 10 years or so, I've been very fortunate. I picked up a bunch of kids, each year a different kid, for a gap year. And they kind of follow me around, And in the beginning, I thought, well, isn't it wonderful of me to share my knowledge with these ingenues? Well, in fact, what they bring is these terrific smiles. They bring enthusiasm. They bring a sense of perspective, and above all, knowledge of technology. And they also tend to remember where your car is parked. So I would encourage all of you to consider doing that. A couple of them are here, Alyssa and Laura and Joni, and a bunch of them are going on to become lawyers. A couple have gone on to be social workers, but they are, I'm 70, I'm going to be 78 years old, okay? So you sit in a courtroom and try and interview a juror who's 32. You know what the gap is? You have any sense what that gap is? So these guys can make that gap that much shorter, and they do. And they pick up things you miss. They remember names that you forget, things like that. I've always maintained, I've said this repeatedly, I think it's a privilege to be a lawyer. I really believe that. I should be selling shoes somewhere, okay? What we do, think about what we do, what lawyers do, and what we criminal lawyers do. We deal with the machinery of the Constitution. We really do, And then, and you extend that out, then we deal with liberty. And what happens when you practice over a number of years, you become inured to this thing. Say, I got this guy 3 years. It was a terrific deal. Well, pal, that wasn't your 3 years, okay? So for 3 years, that guy's going to have somebody else tell him what he's going to eat for breakfast, when he's going to eat breakfast, when he's going to go to sleep at night. And we tend to forget that. And you need the reminder about that. So that's why I think being a lawyer is such a privilege. And I think this group represents that feeling, that belief, that it is really a privilege to be able to practice law and do what we do. The people I admire, it's easy to get, you get lucky and you get a case and then your name gets in the paper and you get, those things happen. And that kind of happens, then maybe you get another case, whatever. And there is so much luck involved in what we do and becoming known or recognized and stuff like that. But the people I admire are the people who kind of keep on going back day after day, plugging away, getting one crappy deal after another, then occasionally stealing the courthouse for somebody, and then walking home and feeling good about themselves. And that's what I really admire. As I say, it's easy to get the accolades. And there are, of course, there are the parts of the practice that are somewhat difficult. I find personally, I'm sure I'm the only one in this room, but I find gratitude to be in short supply. Does that apply to any of you here? I'm called to mind, I was talking to Dave Leff earlier, I was called to mind one particular client who he was charged with doing some not so nice things to his spouse, and he was held on a very restrictive bond, but I called him up, I said, come on down to the courthouse, they're gonna alter your bond, you're gonna be able to do whatever. And so he came down with great anticipation, dressed in his blue blazer and his gray slacks and his rep tie and whatever. And we went over to the court, and I met a prosecutor and said, listen, Willie, we can do this. We can do this. We just can't do it today. I need a week to put some pieces together. I'm a lawyer. We do things. All right, so I asked the guy, can I use the side courtroom interview room? Sure. The sheriff marshal says, sure. And I took him in. I said, just sit down. Look, we're going to get this done, but you're going to have to wait a week. What? What? You effed up again. And besides, and this is the remark I'll never forget, and I take it with me to the grave, never wear brown shoes with a gray suit. So I use that every morning when I wake up. I see where the shoes are lined up with respect to the clothing. Let me, I've said this before, many of you have probably heard it. I stole it from David Grudberg, but there are four stages to a lawyer's career, right? Who's Willie Dow? Get me Willie Dow. Get me somebody like Willie Dow. Who's Willie Dow? Well, I know I can speak for one of us in this room and perhaps another who's in close proximity of age to me. We're kind of worried about that because a lot of people don't know who's Willie Dow anymore, okay? Let me end by saying this, okay? I talk about the fact that it is a privilege to practice law. One of the things we do is a consequence of what others have done before us. They've kind of set standards, they've set methods of practice, they've set the way we interact with people, they set tone, they set methods, and if we keep our eyes open, we can learn from them. Now, there's a lot of people that most of you folks here won't know about, but these are people who deserve to be remembered, okay? First, of course, Tom Ullmann, who was in fact, and remains the gold standard for our representation. Tommy Clifford became a judge, started out as a defense lawyer. Charlie Hankin, who you could wake up at 3 in the morning and he'd say, you know, on that case, we're going to have to send out an investigation. He was one of those guys. He was always thinking. Mort Lewis, old public defender in GA, then 6. Cookie Poland, who we remembered already. Sue Wise, Ray Canning, Ray Ganem, Richard Meehan Sr., Don Dakers, who passed away a year and a half ago. Max Hyman ultimately became a judge. A good defense lawyer, not so good as a judge. My former partner, Howard Jacobs, who I followed around when I was a young lawyer, followed around for 2 years, and waiting to see fireworks. And 2 years, I never saw fireworks. And then I finally woke up and realized nobody ever went to jail. Seems to me that's what you're all about. And he was phenomenal. Okay, and I worked closely with him. I owe him a lot. Joe Fasano from Hartford. Fellow down in New London, A.J. Washington. He was kind of cock-of-the-walk type of guy. There's a guy named Hy Walensky down there. Art LaFrance with the New Haven Legal Aid or Public Assistance, whatever it was, LAA in New Haven. Barry Johnson. A guy named Jim Marshall, who was rough and tumble guy. Joe Mursky, who used to keep all his clients listed on a yellow pad, who is, in fact, responsible for these group pretrials because Joe had an unfortunate habit of emerging from a judge's chamber and saying it's in the bag. And his bag was smaller than your bag with your client, okay? And he really upset the Ed Peters, one of the former presidents, Paul McQuillan, Jerry Barnett, Ted Koskoff. Ted Koskoff, I'm going to let you, I have to tell this story. Ted Koskoff represented the lead defendant in a huge arson case in 1975. And Ted Koskoff is the guy who founded the American Trial Lawyers Association or whatever. I'm a young lawyer. I'm sitting next to the U.S. attorney who's trying the case. Peter Dorsey was one of God's gifts to the bench. And I'm waiting for Ted Koskoff to light up the courtroom. And the trial goes on for 6 weeks. And I'm still waiting, okay? And then there comes closing arguments. And he gives this kind of pedestrian closing argument. And then the verdict comes in. His client was acquitted. The guy on the bottom was acquitted. And 2 years later, this is a true story. 2 years, I'm mowing my lawn, on probably the last time I mowed my lawn. 2 years later, I'm mowing my lawn, and I said to myself, that son of a bitch. He represented the lead defendant in a big trial, and he hid in the courtroom. Can you imagine the chutzpah that took? Can you imagine what that's like? He didn't say, he said next to nothing. And this was the big shpachon, and he delivered. The point is he delivered. Michael Koskoff, who we lost this year. Frank Riccio Sr., who's just one of God's good people. A guy named George Johnson used to work for New Haven Legal Assistance. Jim Marshall, I mentioned already. And Bill Gallagher, who did a lot of criminal work, who I mentioned a while ago. So, in sum, thank you for this award. Thank you, Diane, for your introduction. And thank you all.